was, yeah, I wasn't opening the meeting, I should go into the agenda.
We're on.
Okay. All right, it is 1:30, so we'll go ahead, you ready? Want to wait for Chloe? For just a second? Okay, we'll get 1 second. We'll get one. We'll go ahead and get some stuff here. Stuff out of the way first. This is, we're going to call to order the first of 2023 results committee meeting. We have here with us today, Miss Elizabeth Hay, Mr. Carlton Dallas, Dr. Rodriguez is also joining us. And we're waiting for another committee member, Chloe Gordon. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance. You want to stand with me? Can you put a flag up on the screen? Oh, there we go. Okay, there we go. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We are streaming live on YouTube. The agenda has been properly posted. The press hasn't been notified. You haven't been notified. It has been notified. There we go.
Otherwise, we couldn't have to see.
And we have approval of the agenda. Okay, we
So I just
move, and I'll second.
Move to approve the agenda.
All in favor?
Aye.
2-0. We have no public comments, so we'll get right into it. This meeting is, and I want to give you guys a little bit of history. This is my second time on results committee, first time chairing it. And I think based on discussions we've had in board meetings, I wanted to take this opportunity to talk about what the results committee has done in the past, what the scope of the results committee was when it was a motion by the board about 3-4 years ago, and what I think the job in front of the current result committee is going to look like. So the result committee has traditionally been formed to evaluate the superintendent. And that has been the role that it's fulfilled. We have in the past several years used a evaluation instrument called the from Michigan School Board Association, which was adopted in 2019, in I think June of 2019, shortly after Dr. Rodriguez, towards the end of his 90-day evaluation period. Since that time, we basically would meet and go over the evaluation instrument and then bring that forward in October. If I get my dates wrong, Robin, you'll correct me, in October. What has come out of some discussions in the board and my review of coherent governance is that really there is a role in the results committee where we should be looking at what the actual results are. Coherent governance has a section, there's 4 sections to coherent governance: for public edification, board superintendent relationship, governing culture, operational expectations, and results. And to the best of my understanding, we do not have any results policies, correct, Robin?
Our results policy is this.
So there's no policy. There's no R1, R2.
No, we don't.
So this,
So that, I mean, that's the policy. You have not put that, there is no meat that has been put with it.
and there's nothing that we're monitoring, which a big part of coherent governance is not only do we monitor the operational expectations, but we are driving towards the results policies, and we're also supposed to be monitoring those as well. So what we have here, as my understanding from watching previous board meetings, is basically the artifacts of Dr. Rodriguez 90-day evaluation, more or less.
No.
What are the dates? 2018?
The 90-day was the first one, but is that what you're saying?
I think that's the 2018
Oh.
achievement results or reading results. I think that's from 2018. Yeah.
This is from, this is 2019-20.
Okay.
Yes.
So obviously we have neglected the results section of coherent governance. So we had this conversation fairly formally in a board work session about what are we really driving towards in terms of what are all these operational expectations ultimately going to provide to the students and families in the community. And that's where results policies come in. And I asked for committee members and everybody else to get a copy of the second book in coherent governance, which is The Art of Coherent Governing, and it's about implementation. And I don't know who's had a chance to read it. It's something I think we all should look at as a board, but it specifically talks about under coherent governance, how you evaluate the CEO. And the CEO should be evaluated. There's chapter 6, evaluating the CEO in this new governing environment. So the current Michigan School Board Association evaluation tool that we've been using was approved by the board in June of 2019. We did not convert to coherent governance until December 2019, January 2020. And so I think it is appropriate, given the scope of this committee that was approved by the board, and given the fact that we have committed to coherent governance, that one of the things this committee should do is look at what are the results, which right now, as far as I can tell, we really don't have any results policies. How are we going to evaluate the superintendent under coherent governance, because coherent governance lays it out very clearly how you're supposed to do that. And then I haven't been able to get my board docs up, but the other part of that, and it's in here, is the committee scope was,
Can I have it up there?
oh, thank you. To develop a recommendation for evaluation criteria that are aligned with board goals and that adhere to the SMART principles. And this says also develop a recommendation for repopulating results sections of the strategic governance model. Coherent governance is a variation of strategic governance. So I feel like we're well within the scope of this committee to look at what the results section should be, to make recommendations to the board of what else it could include, to align everything to board goals, and then to look at how we're evaluating the superintendent. And that's a lot to do between now and October. So what I thought we would do is talk about in this thing, what we can bring to the full board in terms of how we want to proceed. Because we can make the recommendations for the results committee from the results committee and bring them to the full board. We could have a motion coming out of results committee that the full board look at the results, but we need to have those two things done before I think we can really present the evaluation tool for the superintendent. So that's kind of the history in a nutshell of what I've been able to assess. I think that if we're going to continue to use coherent governing with fidelity, that this is an omission on the board's part to not have these things. And I think it's something that this committee could take on and hopefully get it done over the summer so that come October, we are in line with board goals and with coherent governance. So at this point, do you guys have any questions? Is Chloe on yet?
Chloe's not on. Earl Campbell is on, as well as Dr. Rodriguez.
Okay. Hi, Earl. So do you guys, Elizabeth, do you have any?
How are you doing?
Good, thanks.
My question, or one question that I did think of asking, is to Dr. Rodriguez himself, to ask if there are, anytime you evaluate somebody, you want to know what they think they're doing well at or where they're falling short. So I was curious to ask him if there's a specific place that he feels currently he's not being evaluated on that he should be. Perhaps there's an area that he's performing really well in and we don't see that, or we're not evaluating that portion of his duties. So,
well, and I'll answer it and then let Dr. Rodriguez answer. I do think that is something that came up in previous iterations. And Mr. Campbell's on here, so maybe he can back me up on that. In my opinion, the Michigan School Board tool does have some areas where it doesn't really, for example, COVID, we had a hard time capturing how COVID was handled. And then there were some specific issues with how they were scored for the financial piece, the budget piece. Correct. Where basically we could only give him a 3 out of a possible 4 for having a balanced budget. And I believe, and Dr. Rodriguez might be able to step in, a 4 out of 4 would be to come in 2% under budget. But I think based on South Carolina law or board policy, he's not allowed to come in under budget. Was that the gist of the problem, Dr. Rodriguez?
Yes, I mean, I think there are a few issues with the current tool, but that is one for sure that says, you can't hit a maximum score, right? So you just want to be in the system that allows you to get the maximum score, right? Whether you get it or not, you want to have the chance to get it, right? I think that's, so I think you articulated that very well. I think there are differences between Michigan school system and South Carolina school systems in the evaluation component. I mean, when you look at certain components within the system that in our current model, right, there are certain things that I'm the only one in the entire system held accountable for, and it doesn't move all the way through the chain of command down to the classroom level, where as an example, if you're talking about student achievement, right, in the state of Michigan, it is 40% of a teacher's evaluation. It is 40 or 50% of a school administrator's evaluation. So that is a direct pipeline all the way through the entire system. State of South Carolina evaluation model does not allow you to do that. It has a student achievement evaluation is not part, in terms of how students score on SC Ready assessment, is not part of a classroom teacher's evaluation. It's not part of a school administrator's evaluation, and we have to use the state adopted evaluation tool. So for them, so therefore there isn't a direct line that connects that. So that makes me the furthest individual from the classroom, yet the only one that is connected to that, right? So I think there are other ways at getting at it that are probably a little more fair in the evaluation system than the way that currently reads. It hasn't been implemented because of COVID, but I'm just saying that is an issue that exists within that evaluation system.
And to follow up on that, I think, a lot of reading on these kinds of things, I do think we can have as the result student achievement. And I think that the board has expressed a real interest in that being a driving force, but how we evaluate student achievement. And one thing that I noticed with the results policies, which we do not have, that we are supposed to be monitoring just like OEs, is that you look at it, the criteria is the maximum score, although it's not a number, but you can have one of three outcomes. You can have making reasonable progress with exceptions, and not making reasonable progress. And to me is a better, I think lines up better with South Carolina. So I don't think we need to change the results and say we're not going to look at student achievement. I think we need to think about how we're first of all, what results we want to have, and then how we evaluate what the organization, school district is doing, and then fundamentally what our CEO, Dr. Rodriguez, is doing. So I think that's one way to come at it. So I think those are some of the concerns that have been raised in the past with the superintendent's evaluation. And I think to me, and I want your feedback on this, everybody, I think what we need to do is talk about the results first, get some results hammered down, and then go back and say, okay, if these are the results, what are the metrics and the indicators that we are using to evaluate both the organization and the CEO in terms of desired outcomes? So, and I'm kind of looking suspiciously at the quiet Dr. I was calling Dallas, because I feel like
Dr. Dallas.
Dr. Dallas, I feel like this is something that you brought up.
Patient is in trouble if I'm the doctor. All I gotta say.
Management. So that is kind of my statement, is that I think what would be good for this committee to do is to take some of the feedback we heard from the board, look at what coherent governance and things we're supposed to be doing, match those two things up and come up with some results. And then then bring those as a recommendation to the board, which will probably be a fulsome discussion with the full board. We'll probably need to come back then after bringing that up to the board, do some more work on it, eventually agree. And we're not going to hit every result right out of the gate, but agree on the important desired outcome. And then once we have those in place, which I would say we probably need to have in place by August, then look at how the coherent governance model wants us to evaluate that. Because what it says in coherent governance is basically, as we're going along and monitoring all these OEs, and we're finding that the organization is in compliance or not in compliance, or compliance with noted exceptions. That's a portfolio on which we base the summative evaluation of the CEO. In addition to which the results policy, so it's two-part, you evaluate the OE as you go, and you're supposed to be evaluating the results policies as you go. And you take the totality of those two things together, and you're gonna come up with an evaluation. Not gonna be as numeric as the Michigan State Board. So, but we're gonna need to find out, once we have some results policies in, if we're going to need to both do the coherent governance review of the OEs and the result policies, or once we have done all this work, if they're still going to want a numeric sort of Michigan School Board Association evaluation, which is, in my opinion, going to end up being a lot of duplication of effort. But we should probably know that in July, beginning of August, and it's May. So what do you guys think about that commission to the committee?
Sounds great, because
I
that's
do
don't
have,
how many we want to.
Dr.
Go
Reddick?
ahead, go ahead.
I do have one other thing to add, and I'm sorry because I'm not in the room, so I don't mean to jump in and cut anybody off. But so one other thought too is, we're in May right now, right? That means July, August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April are in the rearview mirror, right? And so in terms of whatever it is we do, just in terms of being fair about my ability to execute on anything, if the evaluation tool is going to be modified and finalized in July or August, to make any impact on anything that's identified, is going to be, I'm going to have 2 months to do it.
Well-
So I'm just throwing that out there. Not saying I think you're headed down a good road, but I'm just saying that because you don't want to have to try to hit 2 targets. I want to try to hit 8 target. So that's just the only thing, just for us to keep in mind as we revamp it too. I'm in support of what you're trying to do,
No,
but just as we revamp it, that's all.
She was speaking.
I lost my train of thought, so go ahead.
Me?
Yes.
I'm just trying to figure out where a non-committee member fits in. That's all.
maybe a little less formal.
Okay, all right. So this is a huge process. It really is, because it will involve shifting potentially the direction of the entire organization, all the employees, the instructional people. And having been through these types of processes, they normally start with confirming your strategy. Is your strategy still accurate? I mean, we've been through a COVID, and so we had to suspend what was in writing for 2 or 3 years. So it may be that we do have a longer horizon to actually pursue if we want to do it, per protocols. So that would start with strategy being first, confirmation or refutation of strategy. Has the environment changed, political environment, all those things that matter on that. And then and I think the superintendent would be the one that would actually take the lead on doing that and bringing that to this group, and giving updates on that. The next area that normally flows out of that are the goals. So the strategy is where you do your macro, what's going on, what are the micro, and then that says, well, what are the goals that will drive us towards achieving that? And that would be where you start talking about maybe positioning against a different peer group. I think right now, a lot of our metrics are against the median, 50%. Maybe as one of the premier districts in the state of South Carolina, we want to compare ourselves to the top 3. And maybe that becomes some of the goals. And from the goals, develop and flow this empirical results. And I think that's a longer horizon, but I think it gives the district itself time to sort of mull over and really inform itself on what are the new elements that are present that were not present when this set was developed. And then I tend to think at that point, the goals could be maybe who we're comparing against, the quality of the education or whatever. The group would have to decide that. But I also think the results should be very empirical. So that, it's very clear as the administration and the organization and the board that we met those types of things. And I do agree they should be connected so that whatever is being targeted can actually flow down throughout the entire hierarchy. Madam Chair, you made a good point. If our sole employee has the ability to cascade that down, and that's fine, even if it's not included in the state portion for the teachers. So I'm thinking it's probably going to take 9 months.
And I think that there is two things that we work on. One is we're in a coherent governance, the OEs that we've been monitoring since the beginning, since the fall. So throughout this whole school year, we have that annual work plan. I don't know if I have that handy, so I don't have that in my notes, but that is actually the basis for the CEO evaluation. The results policy is, I think, 100% going to take longer, but we need to start talking about, to me, if having coherent governance without having results is like having, an airplane without an engine. I mean, it's just, it's not adding any benefit to what we're trying to do, but I don't think that we're going to have all the results hammered out for the district come July or August. I think my goal would be to have the concept of the need for result policies and to begin to have a conversation with the board about, okay, if we acknowledge that we need result policies and that we are monitoring those as well. And generally the first result policy is always the mission statement. I mean, at some point, the whole thing should be driving towards the mission of Beaver County School District. And I like our mission. And then, result 2 is academic achievement. To your point, Mr. Dallas, you need very specific metrics. They don't want, we'll be a good district. They want, we're going to compare ourselves. We're going to have a 20% increase in school reading score. And I'm just throwing that out. They want very specific metrics. So I think that there's a couple ways we can go. And then this is what I've been thinking about. We can start working on the results policies, get approval from the board, which is already in our scope to do so. Start working on result policies, bringing to the board, having that dialogue back and forth with the board, doing a lot of the work here in terms of wordsmithing, discussion, and bringing that to the board. So we're not, because it's a full day work session type of thing, and start hammering out some results. And we can just stick with the Michigan School Board Association monitoring tool with, maybe tweaking the financial piece or whatever. But I think that's also creating some duplication of effort because we are at the end of August going to have a full year's worth of OEs that we've monitored that the district's in compliance with. We could then do a hybrid. We could do the OEs plus parts of the Michigan. So there's some opportunities to maybe not fully implement the evaluation process for the CEO. But the thing with the coherent governance is that these result policies is more of a discussion and less of evaluation. Like, are we making reasonable progress towards?
That was sort of my point in asking Dr. Rodriguez, is like, what's working, what isn't?
Yeah.
Or what do you wish was being highlighted more? Or what do you wish, or, see a purpose for dropping off?
Right.
No, you're fine.
Thank you. I was looking at the people. So that's our work plan there, which shows the OEs that we are supposed to be bringing to the board and discussing and agreeing that the organization. My take on, after reading a lot about coherent governance and looking at other schools' result policies and whatnot, is that the result policies are really, to your point, the goals. I mean, the district does the strategy, the board does the goals. If the district and Dr. Rodriguez have done what we want them to do, we will have these things as a result. We'll have higher, we'll be in the top 3 districts for teacher salary. That's a metric. We will be 20% increase in EOC algebra. That's a metric. So they're sort of, we'll have these results with these very specific indicators. The OEs are sort of, we basically say, here's what we want. You go out and do it however you see fit. But here are the non-negotiable things that you have to accomplish. Those are the OEs. They're like the non-negotiables. The school will be safe. The school will, all the different OEs that we have. And we are evaluating those in an ongoing basis. So I don't know what will happen come October, because I agree that there's no chance we're going to have all this done.
No.
I think it's just a question of acknowledging that we don't have it, acknowledging that we should have it, and then designing a path to get there within this committee.
Mhm.
And then what do we do come August, September? Do we then just go, okay, we're on the journey to this process, but we're just gonna stick with the old, or do we put in a new or a hybrid type model? Yes, please.
I would think teeing up a conversation philosophically about where we are in coherent governance and where we see the gaps, and again, led by the superintendent, so that that's normally what I see. The chief executive actually looks at the organization and comes and does something comprehensive and says, here where I see new gaps. And here's where I see, like, take communication. Communication could be the strategy that we adopt a whole new communication methodology so that the public knows all the great things, right? So I think if there's a way to inform the rest of the board, this is going to be a pretty detailed, laborious effort. And their minds become aware of the need for that. Then I think we'll have all 11 members energetically supporting the results committee. Not saying they don't now, I'm just saying that that would be, I think, would be a very valuable outcome. And I think prepping them that the length of time that this requires would allow us to go through it to find what are current best practices, but also what are best practices within our current administration and our whole methodologies. And then, like you're saying, Madam Chair, the goals would be very clearly informing the results that we come up with. But the results, again, should be very empirical.
Yes.
And so you know, you may have at some point come up with things, not only if you look at on the coherent governance where it says, I think it said our customers are students and parents, and our owners are residents and voters and employers. We probably need to survey and say, hey, are we delivering what you really need? I just left an Economic Development Corporation presentation, so that's why I'm a few minutes late. And that was one of the questions. What type of talent do we need to be preparing to satisfy this influx of jobs that are coming?
Right, and we're, yeah, and that, to me, and Mr. Campbell, I'm gonna get to you in 2 seconds. I think that's important, is that the results think the OE is reactive. The results should be proactive.
Mhm.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes, I agree with Dr. Rodriguez. When he says about, you know, we don't grade him on teachers. If the students' score does not go up, you know, we blame him, but we don't blame the teachers. You know, and I think that we need to look at this to make sure that we are being fair to the superintendent. The other thing is that a lot of times when we do the evaluation, a lot of the test scores are not even in, and that's just because the state is backed up. So you know, I think we need to do a good work session on this and come up with the best program to operate, to evaluate the superintendent. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. So it sounds like the first step is going to be to make sure that the board to confirm the scope, because the board has already made a motion and it's been approved that this is the scope of the results committee. And so to bring to them and say, here's our plan for this year's result committee. We're going to ask them to, first of all, acknowledge the absence and the need for results, and that's going to be an ongoing, like you said, length of time sort of process that will require all 11 members to be engaged. And so once we get that path rolling, then we can kind of start looking at that and come back and say, okay, so given that this is the direction we're going to go, what instrument should we use? Should we adhere to what we've been doing, which we know is problematic, to Mr. Campbell's point? You know, it's not fair in some ways. And I'm glad that Dr. Rodriguez is here, but we also, Dr. Rodriguez, you know, we have to hold him accountable. We can't say
Right.
like, what do you think we should be? We have to have that conversation just with the board and say, what are the accountability measures that we can take to our constituents and say that we are rigorously looking at every aspect of the corporation. So
Madam Chair, can I just,
please,
for clarification? So the process that I'm most familiar with is you go through that process and you come up with what the strategy and goals are. And then at that point, the accountability comes in the results. And that is solely on the superintendent.
right, the results are, we're monitoring both. Like I said, I think we're monitoring that the superintendent is taking the district in the direction that the board wants it to go. And then the OEs are within these parameters.
Okay.
You can do whatever you want to get us to where we want you to take us, but you gotta follow these guidelines of the OEs.
Just for your information, so on the agenda, the board goals, that is the board goals. So our agenda, when we do student achievement, finance and stuff.
Right.
Those are the goals for that.
But they're just not a policy. And we can codify them into policy, but like, for my personal example, I found one that I thought, rather than, you want to keep it to about 3 to 5 goals.
Yeah, yeah.
And the first goal is usually the mission, doesn't have to be, but that's sort of what the expectation is. And that mission encompasses a lot of things I like, global citizens, personalized learning. Because I think that some of the things that we talked about at that meeting, at that work session, were, I felt strongly that project-based learning, internships and experiences, but increased development of the arts, that those were all things that people were saying above and beyond the EOC numbers and the other test numbers. We want to make sure that we're not losing focus on bringing those things in. But the one thing I saw this one school district is rather than having a facilities and an HR and a budget, they had stewardship, that you will manage the resources, which is, the budget, the personnel and the buildings that we have, efficiently and in the best interest of the student. Well, that's a very broad goal, but then the indicators that you're successful is, you could say very similar to what we have now, less than 5% teacher turnover, less, whatever, I can't make these off the top of my head. But I think that's where the board would have a lot of conversations about if Dr. Rodriguez came to us and said, I've done a great job stewardessing. I've been a good steward
Yes.
of these resources. We want to know, what does that look like, right? And so that's where I think that we could have broader goals with very specific. So that does bring up another point with our current committee, whatever it is, charter, or whatever the scope. I would like to make a tweak to it. I think we should replace strategic governance with coherent governance, because this was a motion that came out prior to coherence. I would also like to change SMART principles to FAST principles. And I think that is a significant difference. SMART is a little bit more, it's still being used quite a bit, but SMART is specific, measurable, attainable, something in time. What's the R stand for? Reasonable.
Can't remember.
Yeah. FAST is frequent, aspirational, which I think is a big, and coherent governance backs this up by saying that we should be frequently monitoring these things. So frequent, aspirational, specific, and transparent,
Oh, I like
specifically
that.
measurable. So I was thinking we could bring as a motion to amend the recommended scope, that we're still going to develop a recommendation for evaluation tool, that we are going to develop recommended evaluation criteria adhering to SMART, and then repopulating the results section of the coherent governance manual. That's what I'm thinking.
I think the adoption of FAST in itself, a lot of times when you got a large organization like this, one single word change can make a huge difference in what the mindset of the organization. Adding aspirational means we're going to continue to look forward.
Yeah, it's not attainable, it's aspirational.
Right. And so I think that is something that is necessary because, the whole low country is changing so rapidly. And one of our raison d'etres is to provide the talent that satisfies not only the societal needs, but the economic needs of businesses and what have you that are here, the arts, those types of things, the quality of enjoyment of society, those types of things can all be folded into aspirational.
Yeah.
So that's something I think is a great starting point. I think I do feel the superintendent has to be charged with leading that. So that he comes to the board with what, under those guidelines, what does he or he see
Exactly.
as opportunities? And then
The
we,
superintendent actually would come up with and recommend indicators and we would have, that would be it. But he, generally speaking, the staff actually develops, we would say, you know, we can come up with what we wanted to see. But then they will bring to us also indicators. We will know we are making reasonable progress when, you know, we have a balanced budget and when we have closeouts, and we can kind of have that discussion as well. So it's very much putting the onus on Dr. Rodriguez with us saying, here's the direction,
Mhm.
you know, and like I said, I think we should, you know, I would like to see us expand academic achievement to include what are we training, you know, emphasis on what is the community looking for from an academic achievement.
and if I may, strategy tends to start with where the demand lies. So if I'm going to create a successful organization, then I need to know what is society saying there's a gap here. So I think that has to be part of it, and going into the community and really, you know, sort of really empowering and the communication efforts. Surveying not only the teacher, not surveying teachers, yes, but also students and parents, but also residents and voters.
And this is a whole sidebar, you know, you and I talked about, but there's a lot of data out there that we can mine.
Mhm.
You can be on a survey. We can say how, like, for example, I think parent engagement, how many people sign up for Power School? Is if you only got 10% of your parents, because that's where I get my kids' attendance, grades, you know, all that. Like, there are some other data reports that we could look at, where we could really get some
Yeah.
sense as well. So my thoughts are coming out of this meeting, because it's 2:06, 5 minutes over as it is that
For meetings.
we gotta go. If we wanted to make a motion to amend the committee scope to be more in line with coherent governance. And that in my report, bringing up the fact that we don't have a results policy, and that really what the results policy committee is going to do is going to take, we're not gonna go jump right into the evaluation tool. We're gonna talk about recommendations and then decide if we want to stick with the past evaluation tool, and we'll have Robin send out what we use. I think I've sent it out to the committee members before, what we used before, the Michigan State School Board, or you can see it online.
Mhm.
Michigan State School Board Association.
I can see,
Yeah.
because it's not just total, because you all have, well, the board has kind of modified some of it, so I can send you what
Modified
is used to be evaluated.
Right. So we can either stick with what we currently have and just make it work for this year, even though and try to fix the problems to the best of our ability. Or we can develop a hybrid where we use parts of it, or we can say, we're gonna use the OEs that we've been monitoring all year, as long as, and I think that what they recommend here is basically a narrative of the results. And I don't know if it'd be fair to say, you know, since he doesn't know the results at this moment. But we can decide which way we want to go, but let's get a handle on the results section first, and then this summer decide which direction we want to go. Or if we want to come up with a whole new, which I can tell you right now, I'd not be super in favor of a whole new evaluation tool, but I guess it could be on the table.
Oh, yeah.
And it gets scored from 1 to 4. And it's like a GPA.
Mhm.
And different people have different responses. The pandemic response, we could probably take out at this point.
And then what's put together is the total accumulation.
And go down to how he's evaluated on teacher retention, because isn't it just, and there's some math involved. There's like, this is 20% of his score, this is 4. We can tweak those weights as well. We could say we could keep this tool and say this is 25% of your score and 75% of your score is the OEs, you know. Yeah. And then we have another piece where we say increased, you know, teacher vacancies were reduced by 2%, stayed the same, increased, you know, and that's like 20% of his valuation right there.
So the student achievement weight is 25%.
But that's just of the first tool, and then there's the budget. So we gotta look, we need to break it down.
15%.
Are you going, Madam Chair, is this going to be sent out?
I can send this out to
Would
you.
you please?
Yes, please.
And we can put it in board docs too. for
Oh,
my
that'd be
report.
great. Yeah.
And I think I need to sit down and really break it out, because I think that whole 7-part questionnaire is like 50% and then the budget, so, and then we can tweak those numbers as well. But like I said, I think that,
So it's like community relations, the weight is 15%.
is it 15% of the total or 15% of the
That-
first part,
Oh,
which
that's
is,
just that section.
Right.
So governance and board relations, the weight of that, this section A is weight 20%.
and so it's crazy about governance and board relations. We have governance culture policies that we, should be using rather than Michigan State. But anyway, so I think that, if we can get to a point where we just sort of are actually tackling the results, give us a couple months of that and then make a decision about the evaluation tool.
As a visitor, the more I see, the more I realize what a big project this is. And I don't think we can adequately do justice to it, to be honest with you, in a few months.
That's what I was gonna ask, what month is he usually evaluated in?
The end of October.
In October.
So then do we think, this is just me
For the
throwing this out
previous
there, it is fair
Yeah.
to assess him on something new where he doesn't know the target, we don't know the target yet for this past school year, and I'm still completely in to still get this going over the summer. But
Go ahead,
Go
Dr.
ahead.
Rodriguez.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, to be honest, I think there are challenges with the existing evaluation that cause issues, as I mentioned earlier, and Mr. Campbell doubled down on. So I think we ought to spend a little time looking at it to see what we can do, and perhaps there's a bit of a hybrid we could do for this year while we continue the work of modifying it, if that makes sense, right?
yes, that's
Where we can
exactly-
capture,
Yeah.
This meeting too.
And I'm sure it sounds like Ingrid's on board for that too. I just wasn't sure if there was something we needed to amend. If there's a portion that we, for lack of a better word, throw out for this past year, but then maybe we focus on that in the next coming months is what we're going to tweak for this past school year. And then focus on diving into what it's going to look like, take it one step at a time.
When does his performance year end?
I think it ends like beginning of the school year, more or less, right? And then we do it in October, the evaluation.
So this is what, May? So
Like
we only,
August to August thing.
he only has 3 months left.
Right.
I would feel very uncomfortable changing what he's being graded on. I would think he retains a full year, but here's how you normalize for it. If there's a metric that he cannot even achieve a 4,
Right, budget.
like,
Yes,
but
that's what I was thinking.
then we grade on a 3-point scale.
Well, we can change the language of that section.
I would feel, just me, I would feel uncomfortable because I think there will be some people saying, well, did you do it to favor the superintendent? So I think we can normalize it and say, well, listen, this is really pretty clear. The gentleman could not even achieve a 4 regardless.
Yeah, that was the discussion of the last board.
Yeah, so let's turn it into a 3-point scale and then grade him, see how that does. Then we're adhering to all the facets of the review tool. But we as leaders are saying, okay, we got to tweak it just a little.
And I agree wholeheartedly. But on the other hand, what I do think, there's 2 things that I think, and this is the discussion this committee needs to have. I'm not saying we settle this right here.
Right.
But when I was on it as a first-year board member was to tweak evaluation. Like we added and removed languages. I think we could still absolutely do that. Those like, what's a 1, what's a 2, what's a 3, what's a 4? We can adjust that with no input from Dr. Rodriguez, but based on what we think we're actually, so, because right now, some of the stuff, like I said, the budget thing, we don't have to say that 2% under budget's a 4. We could say that a balanced budget's a 4.
Chloe on speaker.
Okay, that a budget is a 4, but we can have those conversations, because I do think we had talked about that at the last meeting, that it was wrong, the way it got handled. So there's that. And then the other thing is, I would argue that we need to include some weighting for the OEs at the end of the year, just to start that process, because we have been reviewing those as far as district performance all throughout the year. And I think that should be part of his evaluation.
But has that been part of what was on his evaluation too?
This is all that's been on his evaluation tool up till
So OE's up there?
now. There's no OEs in there.
Then I would say, if it were me, I would feel uncomfortable that my performance appraisals being changed mid-year. Because with an organization this long, it takes a while to make that big thing pivot.
Well, we'll put that on as an agenda topic
Okay.
for the next meeting. But yeah, because I disagree with you a little bit,
Uh-huh.
and I think we can have a really good discussion about that, because I think that his evaluation tool was approved prior to the switch to coherent governance.
Mhm.
So in my opinion, it's been an omission that we haven't been including the OEs, and I think we can, but we'll have that discussion.
Okay. No
And
problem.
we'll get
I just wanted to share.
Yeah, no, and, I rarely disagree with you, so but I think we can have a good discussion about what this looks like. To make it fair without making it look like we're adjusting things to anyone's benefit, that we are still being fully accountable.
And that would be before the full board, that discussion.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And we'll have some of the discussions here and then bring recommendations, and like I said, so, yeah, so basically what we need to start doing on is refresh the committee scope,
Mhm.
recharge the committee. We're gonna have some work to do between now and December to kind of start really getting things moving in the right direction. So can I make a motion? I can't make a motion.
No,
You gotta pass.
you gotta teach me the language because I'm behind the 8 ball on this one.
Okay, so it would be something along the lines of, or can I just pass her the gavel?
You
Okay,
can do that.
I'll pass you the gavel, the hypothetical.
Okay,
Yeah, I know.
For a moment.
And I'm not sure we need to do this with the small board, but that's another conversation.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to learn all the language here and I don't want to.
Let me tell you, welcome to the club.
Right?
Is to recommend a revision to the recommended scope of the ad hoc result,
Motion to recommend
She even had it written down, ready to go.
ad hoc results committee scope. To change SMART principles to FAST principles,
Mhm.
and with the periods in between.
Yeah.
And then to develop, the third bullet point would be to develop, so also change strategic governance manual to coherent governance manual. Then I will lay out into my report, and I will send you guys, well, no, it's tomorrow. I will lay out our discussion, and that what basically we're going to do is we're really gonna start looking at the results section and how we can be in compliance with coherent governance. And then at the same time, we're gonna have some discussions about what the evaluation tool looks like, because we have identified some areas that, it's not matching up with what the superintendent's actually, we're asking him to do.
And in that teeing up, will we include that the superintendent will be part of that conversation?
Well, he's really not supposed to be.
Right.
He could come to us
Oh.
with strategy, because we're evaluating him. So
Right.
we should be evaluating his evaluation tool without any input from him.
Sometimes.
Oh, Robin disagrees. Okay, Robin, you're the board assistant.
The superintendent usually has some input or say of the evaluation tool.
Okay.
Because one way is it's like, is that measurable or not? Is that something that?
Well, that was the point of what I was
Yeah.
asking him in the first place.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
are certain things,
I just want to make sure we don't have the impression that we're tweaking the tool
No,
based on.
right.
Okay.
Motion, okay, so let me.
This is just
clarify this.
conversation, I guess, at this point.
Motion
right?
to recommend a revision to ad hoc results committee scope to change SMART principles to FAST principles and to change strategic governance to coherent governance.
Mhm.
Is that it?
see, I'm glad I didn't do it because I would have forgotten the
Yeah.
first part. About
Yeah.
smart to
Yeah,
pass.
so you're gonna second it?
I second this motion.
Ms. Gordon, you have just joined the conversation. Okay,
Oh.
I told her we were ending the meeting, so I couldn't get her, I don't think she wasn't answering.
so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You can throw it in there. Let's
Robin, let's you and I
go.
have a conversation.
Hi, Ms. Mercado. How you doing?
Spread that line a little bit. Because. I thought we were supposed- If we are, then let's do that in a transparent way, because I just don't want to give the impression if we're gonna make changes that that's, but I do think the theme of coherent governance is indicators are supposed to be specific. I
Mhm.
don't think we have done that very well throughout OEs and results. So I think that however, we superintendent bring recommendations to the board, having conversation. What do we really want? And I mean, it should be hard, it should be comparing ourselves to So that's a conversation I'm looking forward to having. with smart people. All right.
Chloe said that she tried to get on, she was having, so I told her the meeting was ending at this point, so.
Yeah, she would have probably just stayed. If you have anything, committee members or,
You wanna go ahead and
Provide
schedule the next meeting?
yes. Can we do these in minutes at the same time and more easily attend? How hard is it for you?
Just.
Who's the other member?
Chloe, Gordon.
Oh,
Yeah, this is long as, we have the space over here. And it's fine.
can Ms. Gordon attend as well? Does
She was
distance-
planning on coming over, but she ended up getting, not able to leave. Perhaps it's got construction or whatever.
Okay, so. I don't know the calendars.
I don't have one of mine with me, but I will do the best.
Does this time work for people? Because I know I tried to schedule, so Robin's not coming on or going off the island.
This was not the best time, to be completely
What's
honest,
a good time?
but earlier in the morning would be great, because if we do it on, for example, a day when I have childcare, I only have childcare till 1.
Okay, so maybe we could do 10:30?
Yeah.
Does that work for you, Robin?
And I just need a Tuesday, Thursday, or Friday.
Let me see if I can-
Let's do it Friday, then you could stay, Robin, and go to the beach.
Oh, yeah.
I guess what I'm feeling is we have a very diverse group here. And so should it rotate?
No,
It should.
the results committee?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, never has.
Then we're trying to accomplish our support.
Yeah.
We're trying to accommodate Ms. Hay.
But for example, like finance doesn't rotate, it's always in Beaufort.
Oh, you mean like going back and
Yeah.
forth?
Yeah.
Most of our committee meetings are in Beaufort, and most will do on.
Yeah, this one, talk
Yeah.
about the individuals involved in this one.
Yeah.
So I look at, we got 2 people. So the board makes accommodations to hold meetings in Hilton Head. Right, because Hilton Head people have to drive so much. And I'm just looking at Ms. Gordon. If the meetings are always going to be here, it will be incumbent upon her to always drive or either participate
Or Zoom.
or Zoom, well, then everybody can Zoom.
Yeah.
Okay. So it doesn't have to be,
No,
I'm just looking at the equity.
yeah, no,
And again, Ms. Hay, I'm just,
well, it's me too, because it's hard
Yeah.
for me to, as chairing it, I would rather do it in person. But like even when I chair technology, I do it by Zoom,
Yeah.
because during the day with work and
Yeah.
kids, I can't get over there.
maybe it's better that we always have Zoom as an option regardless.
Zoom is
It
always
always,
an option.
yeah,
Zoom is always an option.
Okay.
yeah, for everything.
But with 2/3 of the committee being time constrained and over here in Hilton Head, if it works with Robin, it would make.
But if we applied it to the board, then the board meetings might always be off island, right? So I'm just trying to make sure that that bottle spins around, that everybody,
And most committee meetings are done. Now, most, all
And
committee
one of
meetings
the
are.
reasons is just because of the technology and being able to, it's easier for accommodating. Like in conference room or in the media center because of the
The other thing that
technology.
results have that other communities don't have is we don't have any staff necessarily that we need to make sure comes over,
Mhm.
whereas here. it's-
We did have the person who was assigned results.
There's out of person.
Right, so Brett would be the new person assigned to this, so he would be the one coming over.
We can see how it goes, like, go forward. If we need to have someone there. I feel like we're gonna start pushing this ball downhill and we'll have to kind of adjust it. As it gets to roll.
Yeah. Perception is so important. And the board is pretty cohesive now. So,
So what are we saying? We said, which day are we looking at?
So can we do 10:30? There's not my glasses. That's my glasses.
Can we do a little later than 10:30? Because we would, for us, we would need to leave the office by 9 to be here by 10.
But what's
Just that up.
what works? What's the earliest you think would be
I mean,
reasonable?
we can do it 11. That means
I
we
think
can.
11 should be. Because I mean, I'm already 24 minutes over. It's not typical.
Date.
So what date range
What
are
date
you
are you
thinking?
on?
Tuesday, Thursday, or Friday. And I think we should have one before maybe at the end of, before this month is over, because this was sort of a pre-meeting.
So if you are you trying to have it before the next board meeting?
No, I mean, we don't
Okay.
have to, because that's
Okay,
only
to
just next
report-
week.
Yeah, I
Okay.
can't.
So we could do the week of the 22nd. There's legislative committee and academics on there, but Tuesday's open because it's not a board meeting day.
Correct.
Is that a good day? for you?
That's fine.
So Tuesday, the 23rd at 11. And then when you have that next meeting, we can talk about if we want to start doing it over there. Most people don't attend the committee meetings in person.
Yeah, but I'm looking at, we got 2 employees driving too. So
it's 11.
I just, maybe it's just Zoom.
We can do it. And if we can get back, we can have another discussion, just see if we want to just do it by Zoom. I just felt like for the first one, it's.
Oh, absolutely.
Someone come and like in person.
Absolutely.
So the 23rd, 11 o'clock, are we gonna consider this a hybrid meeting? Okay.
And, which.
Well, then we could do it earlier if it's a hybrid, because then if she's not
Hybrid
driving
means,
here.
no, hybrid means that
She-
we would have to come over.
Oh,
here.
okay, got it,
Everybody else.
understood.
If it's just totally Zoom, then we would be broadcasting from the
Understood.
office and
Well,
not
I
making
am-
copies. or
I am
anything,
fine,
so
I mean,
it's
really, I can do it, we can still do
Yeah.
11/23 and just you stay in district office. we'll do it by Zoom. But
fine. So
I,
if it's,
I'm not gonna be able to make it.
It's up to you. I mean, we're fine. If you want us to come over here, that's fine. If you want the papers and stuff, that's fine. So, well, we give you the hard copies because some people need paper. Some of you don't.
I don't-
I feel like someone's pointing at me.
No, I'm not pointing
I'm
at
not a
you.
member of this committee.
No, I'm not pointing, I'm not pointing at you.
I have an ongoing debate.
She has an ongoing
The
debate.
paper,
with
the
me
amount
about
of
paper,
paper.
So it was really directed to her.
She's making fun of me because I was like, why do we have?
Quit chopping down trees.
My son,
But I'm sorry, if we're going to do it just totally by Zoom, if you want to start it earlier.
Earlier,
at
that
10:30,
was my,
we can do
yeah,
that.
Let's do 10:30 by Zoom on the 23rd,
you got it.
because I don't particularly need committee meetings. I think that what we're gonna do is we're gonna bring some recommendations to the board, and there's gonna be a lot of discussion, probably in a work session. Someone choose to, okay, are we done? We adjourned.
We are want to adjourn.
I would like to. adjourn.
Okay, you're adjourned by unanimous consent.
salute.
It's a hard element.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thanks, Dr.
Bye.
Rodriguez.
Thank you all.
To,
Have a
start
good
figuring out
one.
Where to bite.
Bye.